Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your welcome tonight. Really is a privilege to be here. And I'm going to try and keep this to 35 minutes. I do have a second session, though. So there will be another session in 2 weeks' time. So if it doesn't go very well tonight, you can avoid the next one. But I've got loads of stuff I'd like to share with you because, okay, I love the Bible and I believe the Bible is the Word of God. And actually, without anything I want to share with you, I believe this is the Word of God. But a lot of people have doubts, and you might have questions and doubts. I mean, can we trust all of it? Is it all the Word of God? How would we test it? Well, when I became a Christian, I was actually really interested in archaeology. And archaeology was like a thing I really wanted to do. This was the mid 1980s, right? And I was a teenager, and there was a film that came out. Guess what that film was? 1986, yeah. So I thought that's what I want to be doing. And now, okay, that's not quite the way my life went. I'm not Indiana Jones at all. But I do love archaeology, and that includes just any archaeology. So I've been involved in the New Forest Archaeological Society. So we've been excavating various things in the UK. But I've been going to and fro from Israel and getting this bigger and bigger picture of just how much the archaeology helps us. Now, Rob, I'm going to have to ask you to click on the slides, aren't I? So there's a great verse in the Bible where they tell Jesus his supporters are making too much noise. They're praising Jesus, and they say in Jerusalem, get these followers to keep quiet. They shouldn't keep shouting out about Jesus all the time. They're too lively. And Jesus says, even if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out. He said that 2,000 years ago. The stones will cry out. 2,000 years later, there's a lot of people wanting to keep Christians quiet. A lot of stuff I want to share with you tonight doesn't appear on the BBC TV. And I'll tell you where you can find this information. It's all truth that I'm sharing with you. This is not crazy YouTube conspiracy theory videos, all right? This is all mainstream evidence. But it's almost like you don't hear about any of this. You'll hear the problems, but you won't hear the evidence. Well, the stones are crying out. And that's why I want to share with you loads of stones tonight. I've got a lovely stone here, right? This stone, it's not a stone, actually, it's mud brick. This may not look like much to you. And I'll explain tonight why that is amazing, right? I'm going to show you a bit later on tonight where that came from. Came from somewhere very, very significant in the Bible. And it is 3,500 years old. It's actually a mud brick. It's been one. You can see it's all eroded, but there you see like the brick shape. And that is a 3,500-year-old mud brick. And it comes from the Holy Land, from a certain place I'll tell you about later on. And it makes me tingle when I see this kind of thing, because I think we're actually holding in our hands the stuff that we read about in the Bible, and it helps to bring it to life and also helps to show the Bible is about real people and real places. Now, like I say, if you click on the next slide, I've been going to and fro, and next time when you come, I might tell you a little bit more about this particular, which I'm not going to talk about now, but it's something that we discovered a couple of years ago in the Holy Land. In Israel, this is just off the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and made the news, by the way. So Times of Israel were publishing this, and if you come next time, I'll tell you why that was a very significant find. But it's only one. I mean, that's one that I was involved in, but it's only one of like thousands of discoveries that keep confirming that the Bible is real history. So what we're talking about here is real history. Rob, I just point at you when you're my point. I'm this the pointer. So slick, click. Real people, real places, real events. And the archaeology is good here. So for a couple hundred years now, certainly the last 100 years, and it's been accelerating, more and more things have been found that demonstrate we're talking about real places, real people, real events. So I'm going to share some of this with you now, but okay, before I do that, let's get in an airplane. Let's fly out there, because I want you to get the lie of the land before we talk about the actual nitty gritty, okay? So jump in a helicopter with me now. We've done the El Al, or the EasyJet flight out to Tel Aviv, right? So we've got off. Anytime you arrive in Ben Gurion Airport from April through to October, you don't need a brolly, you don't need a jacket, it is wall-to-wall sunshine, okay? It's a different climate. So sunshine from certainly May till the end of September. And we're going to first of all go down south. Now take a look at this as the video plays. I just talk while you're watching the video. But this is the click. Click. It should work if you click it. Click. And yeah, just, oh, will it? Oh no, it won't click. Oh, okay, it won't click. I'll work out how we can get that to work next time, because I don't think you can make the video play in there, can you? Don't worry. I love the way, Rob, you keep appearing in front of it. It's like green screen. It's brilliant. It's on location.
Rob has flown out there.
Don't worry about the video then. I've got a couple
on location.
on location with Rob. I might work that out for next time, because I want to show you a little bit of video, but just for tonight. Okay, down south. Okay, I don't know if you know the phrase. It's in the Bible, from Dan to Beersheba. Yeah. So Beersheba is the southernmost town of the Bible, the ancient Israelites. This is near Beersheba and Arad. These are places, it's not far from the Sinai desert. When Moses came up with the Israelites, that's the kind of land they came up through when they came from the south. And that's the desert land of the south. Now that is the southern end, so Beersheba. Let's now go to the northern end, Dan. So if you click on the next slide, there's the click, and that's basically the area of the Sea of Galilee. Now again, if you have the video, you'll see the Sea of Galilee, but just looking at the slide here, it gets very green. This is right at the north, not far from Dan. So we've gone from the desert in the south to the green of the north, and the Sea of Galilee's there, just out of view. And Dan, the city of Dan, is not far from there. Now, okay, how long did that journey take us? Well, it is basically half a day's drive. That is the distance from Cardiff to Snowdon. That's all you've done. And you've just gone from the deserts of the south up to this green northern part of Israel. See, the land of Israel is only about the size of Wales, and yet it's got all this different kind of landscape: desert, lakes, inland seas, mountains, green grass. It's all there. And this is the land where so many of the events of the Bible took place. And that's really going to be important now when we think about what's being found there, what's being preserved. Click. Let's go back down south. By clicking and down to the Dead Sea. Okay, so look, okay, the Dead Sea, beautiful, right? Well, not really. It's called dead for a reason. That looks beautiful, but it's completely dead. Nothing can live there because it's so high in salt content. There's no rain, no fish, nothing lives there. It's completely dead. It's barren. And all around the edge, you see this kind of white, it looks like beach, but it's salt, really. It's all salt. Good for your skin, apparently. Whenever you go out there, you want to layer this on. I'm actually 94 years old. It's good for you. But this landscape looks very dead and barren. No rainfall. You never get any rainfall there. The water is all trickling down the brooks and the streams from elsewhere. This is the lowest point on Earth, so it can't go anywhere else. It comes down here. Now, this is the perfect landscape, the only kind of landscape to preserve parchment, paper, papyrus, biblical texts. In other words, if you took a Bible like this one and hid it in a cave near that lake, Dead Sea, it would survive for thousands of years because there's nothing there to eat it. There's no rainfall. No slugs, no snails. I mean, you stick that in your garden, right? How many nights in your garden would that book last before it's been eaten and gone? I mean, one night and you'll have slugs eating it and the damp will get in. A week or two and it'll all be just gone, really. It can survive thousands of years there. Now, this is an amazing place. It's because of the salt as well, right? You know, like when you order something from do you order stuff from Temu? Anyway, if you get something from China, it comes really, really cheap. Yeah. You'll have like a bag of salt in there as well. And it's like, oh, a bag of salt or silica gel nowadays. And of course, that's because it stops the damp building up and things deteriorating. This is basically a giant salt bag that stops any damp. And that's why if you click, this is the place where archaeologists discovered one of the most amazing finds It's Rob down there. It's Rob. One of the most amazing finds, which is the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, I bet you heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? This was an amazing discovery. Okay, you might want to say to yourself, okay, this Bible here is a year old. It's quite a new one, actually. And it's a copy of course, you know, getting back to the original Bible. So how far back can we go? Well, do you know the earliest complete Hebrew Bible until this is about 1,000 years old? 1,000 years old. It's called the Masoretic text. So if you want to find out whether your Old Testament is the same as the Old Testament that Jesus used, you could go back to 1,000 AD, 1,000 years ago. There are fragments before that, but nothing complete. And why is that the case? Because they're using organic material, right? Like paper they use papyrus. They use something, by the way, the Jews, Old Testament, they use something called vellum. Anybody know what vellum is? It's not paper, it's not papyrus, which is a kind of another plant. It's cow skin of cows. That's what they would write on, skin of cows. All of that is organic. And that means the snails and the slugs and the animals and the bacteria will eat it and it'll go. So the oldest we had was 1,000 AD, 1,000 years ago. Now, your Bible was the same as the one 1,000 years ago, no problem. But that's not quite far back enough, is it? You want to get back a bit further. What about back to the time of Jesus? What about before? We couldn't do it until 1948, when the caves around the Dead Sea were discovered. By the way, the way it was found, I've got to be careful with my time, but where it was found, it's worth telling this story, right? 1948, some Bedouin boys were out with some sheep out there in the deserts around the Dead Sea. You can keep sheep, by the way, around there. You might be surprised. Sheep and goats, there's enough stuff growing, little patches, that you can actually keep sheep and goats. You've got to know where to look for the water and the plants. And they lost 2 of their goats and went looking for them. And they saw this cave. This is actually not the cave they threw the rock into, but they saw this cave. There were 13 caves, actually, in the end. But this one you can see in the middle of the screen there with the picture either side. It's one of the caves. That's cave number 13. They saw an earlier cave, and they threw a rock into the cave to see if one of the goats had wandered into there. Bit mean, isn't it, really? Throw a rock in. Anyway, expecting to hear a bleat of a goat that had wandered in. Instead, they heard the breaking of a pot. And these 2 kids climbed up inside, hoping to find maybe some hidden treasure or coins. And instead, they found parchments. Loads and loads of vellum, remember cowskin, parchments. And that was the beginning of the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Archaeologists had to get involved, by the way, because that's the original, by the way, scrolls coming out. You see the black and white picture. And they got on the black market. That's the reason for a newspaper cut out there. The first anybody knew of these discoveries is they've been sold on the black market in New York. People trying to flog them. And that's why the archaeologists then got involved and said, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And they discovered not just the one cave the Bedouin boys had found, but another 12 more caves with lots more scrolls in that hadn't made it onto the black market. If you click on to the next one, the man standing next to me there, my holiday snap. That is the son of one of the 2 Bedouin boys who found the scrolls. And that's Indiana Jones next to him, a wannabe Indiana Jones, Carrie. And in the glass case behind him, that is one of the original jars the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in. They were put in these jars. There's only 4 complete ones in the world. There's some broken ones, but only 4 complete ones, those jars. One's in the Vatican, one's in the British Museum. One's in the Israel Museum, and that one's there in his house with lots of other stuff as well. In Bethlehem. Now, okay, if we just click, the Dead Sea Scrolls are amazing because here's what they tell us. The Dead Sea Scrolls suddenly let us go back 1,000 years earlier with the complete Old Testament, okay? Every book of the Old Testament could be found from 1,000 years earlier. In other words, from the time of Jesus. See, what this Bible was, what these scrolls were, that was an Old Testament Bible that was hidden at the time of Jesus in these caves, sealed up. They forgot they were there. So for 2,000 years, they sat there, no damp, no slugs, no snails, nothing like that. So they were perfectly preserved for 2,000 years. Now, it gets even better than that. What you look at on the screen there is one particular scroll, and it's the Isaiah scroll. It's the complete copy of what we would call the book of Isaiah. It's a scroll of Isaiah, right? Because they had it on scrolls, they didn't have books. The scroll. And that's a complete scroll of Isaiah. And that's a particularly important one because when they put all these scrolls in the caves, they did this at the time of Jesus, right? First century. But some of the scrolls they were hiding in the caves were already really, really old. They're already ancient. Like, if you had a library today that got closed down and shut down and locked up and nobody could go in, the books in the library wouldn't all date to 2024. Some of them would be really old, locked away. That Isaiah scroll dates to about 200 BC, 200 years before the time of Jesus, 2,200 years old. So that is a complete scroll of Isaiah. And by the way, it is the same as your Isaiah in the Bible. And it means overnight, archaeologists could show that you don't just go back 1,000 years and say they've been copying this faithfully. You can go back over 2,000 years and show they've been copying it faithfully. The copying tradition is good. We know this is a reliable copy of what was written down. Well, in the case of the Isaiah scroll, 200 years before Jesus existed. So Jesus was incarnate. So that's the Dead Sea Scrolls, really important. Now, okay, we could talk more about our the Jericho brick there on my MacBook. We could talk more about the different kinds of scrolls we have and so on. And maybe we'll do a little bit of that next time. But what about the content of the Bible? How do we know it really happened? What does archaeology help us understand in terms of, did these things really happen? Or are they like a fairy tale? They've been made up. How can we test that? Well, we can test that. We can test it by looking at what we found in archaeology that confirms what we read in the Bible. So if we click, we have to now think about stone. The reason why we've got to think about stone, you may know, by the way, a very famous stone in this bag of my wife. This is my wife's, it's not mine. Everyone know what this is?
Tablet?
It is a tablet. Very good. It is a tablet. It's a tablet. It's a replica one, this one, okay? Anybody recognise? No, that'd be nice. That is the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone. It's a copy of the Rosetta Stone. See the British Museum. It is the most popular exhibit in the British Museum, by the way. It's not what's on the screen, by the way. I'll tell you about that in a moment. All I was going to do is just show you this for a moment. I can tell you loads about the Rosetta Stone. Amazing, because it's an inscription. And before they found this, they found it 200 years ago. Before they found it, nobody could read hieroglyphs, those mysterious Egyptian writings. Nobody could read them. When that was found, they could, because what that is an inscription. It's actually quite boring, by the way. What it says is quite boring. I'm not going to go into that. But it's in 3 different languages, 3 different scripts. Like when you go to Wales and you see slow, you also see Arath, because they do it in 2 languages. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right as Arath, but anyway, that's how I read it. It's 2 languages, right? It's in English and in Welsh together. Well, that's in Egyptian, it's in Greek, and it's in Aramaic, 3 different languages. So because they could read some of it, they could read the hieroglyphs. Now, the reason for sharing it though with you is it's written not on cow skin, vellum, not on parchment or paper, but on stone. And it's stone that will be preserved, right? It will survive if it's written on stone. And the Rosetta Stone is, it's not really that important. It's 2,200 years old. What's important about it is that it shows us how to read Egyptian. I could tell you some of the details on there if you're interested afterwards. But the writing on stone is really important, because remember what I said about the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? It's only really in the region of the Dead Sea that they would survive. If you had hidden the Dead Sea Scrolls near the Sea of Galilee, you might as well have hidden them in Boscombe. It would just get wet and it would deteriorate and it'd be gone. It's very rare for paper or papyrus or vellum to survive. Stone, though, is pretty good. And so we look for the stones to see what's written there. What do we find? Well, on the screen here, this is found in Egypt, and this is an old one, right? This is called the Merneptah Stela. It's a pharaoh, Merneptah. It's a tablet, a stela. Okay. It's carved in. It's massive, actually. It's in Paris, in the Louvre in Paris. It's quite a tall one. And in this inscription, it's got loads of stuff written in Egyptian. And because of the Rosetta Stone that's been passed around, they could read that when they found it. And when they found it, what they discovered on this 3,200-year-old stone is the first reference to Israel found anywhere in the world, outside of the Bible, right? 3,200-year-old inscription. If you just click on the next slide, there's Rob looking around the corner, cheeky. This is just zoom in on the bit that says Israel. Now, this is really interesting. This is a reference from an Egyptian pharaoh who hated the people of God. And he hated lots of other people, by the way. He was quite fair-minded. He hated lots of people. And on this big relief, he describes lots of nations he destroyed and obliterated. He describes basically it's a military campaign. He goes across North Africa. He goes up through Syria. And he describes lots of different places that he destroys. It's like a sort of, holiday postcard he sent home to his mum saying, look where I've been, look what I've wiped out. And this particular line, it goes right to left in Egyptian. That particular line, we know the sound of Egyptian because of the Rosetta Stone. We know how the words sound when you say them out loud. By the way, I don't want to go too long on this one, but let me just say this. The Egyptian hieroglyph for a cat, we know the sound because of the way it works with the Greek and the hieroglyphs. You can compare them. Guess the sound that it makes when you read the hieroglyph for a cat. Yep, perfect Egyptian. Meow. That's right. Meow. Yeah, the purr. Purr. That's a good guess, but no, not purr. But meow is the right one. You're on the right lines. Yeah. What about donkey? The Egyptian hieroglyph for donkey. Eeyore. Yeah, that is. I'm not making it up. I'm not making it up. That is genuinely that is the sound that it makes when you read it out. That line there, it's kind of been enhanced on Photoshop just to bring out the particular hieroglyphs. That there says Israel. So you sound it, Israel. And it places Israel in the land of Canaan. That's the place that still makes the news today, right now. Israel is no more, it says. I've wiped its seed out. Its descendants. I've wiped them out. It's a boast of a wicked Pharaoh to have wiped out the Israelites in the land of Canaan from 1200 BC. That's 3,200 years ago. First reference to Israel. Now, I just find that amazing because that is basically enemy propaganda. That's like the Nazis, recording the presence of the Jews. It's the enemies recording Israel there in the land of Canaan, as we would call it, 3,200 years ago. Let's get better than names, though. Click. And for this one, right, one day, Sarah's promised she's going to organise us a trip up to the British Museum in London, right? It'd be like, pack your school lunches, right? And we'll do like a school trip. That school trip that you played up on when you went out on a school trip, you can now earn forgiveness before God by coming with me up to London, and we'll do it sensibly, right? No mucking around. And you will see this, which if archaeologists had not brought it back to London, by the way, it would have been in Iran, where I can guarantee it would have been smashed to pieces years ago, right? So I know we talk about people taking things from other countries, but actually it's been in a very dangerous part of the world. It was found in 1846. So it's found by a Victorian explorer, nearly 200 years ago, and brought back to London, where it's been ever since. And you can see it for free. Anybody in the world can see it for free. And a lot of people ignore it. They don't realize how significant it is. That's called the Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser III. Just one to remember. And who cares about Shalmaneser III? Well, he was a king of Assyria nearly 3,000 years ago. It was 853 BC, so 2,850 years ago. And do you see there are like panels? There's like rectangular panels all the way down. They go all the way around, 4 sides panels. Each of the panels shows a different group of people coming to pay tribute to the Assyrian king. So they've come to give an offering, to pay their taxes. Now, the second panel down, if you click, we can zoom in on. And the second panel down shows a king bowing down. That's the one bowing down there, before another king who's standing up. And the king who's standing up is Shalmaneser III that I've mentioned. Okay, Shalmaneser III. That's the king who's standing up. the king is kneeling down. Do you know his name? That is King Jehu of the Bible. Jehu, Jehu. We read about that king in the Bible in 2 Kings. And it actually tells us that name, by the way. There's writing underneath. It looks like scratch marks. It's cuneiform, it's called. And that's another kind of writing along the bottom. And it tells us the name. It says that King Jehu and the Israelites were bringing tribute, tax really, to the Assyrian king. If you click on to the next slide, Rob, here are Israelites on the next slide. These are Israelites on another panel, because there's a panel on each side. These are Israelites bringing the taxes, bringing the tribute to King Shalmaneser. Now, isn't this amazing, right? You are looking at the nearest thing.
On your way out, would you mind grabbing me something?
You are looking at the nearest thing to a photograph of an ancient Israelite. Not just the name Israel, not just the name of a king in the Bible, King Jehu, at the right time, in the right place. 2 Kings, we read about him. But you can even have the nearest thing to a photograph. These images on the screen, this is the national dress of Israelites in the 8th century BC. So we're not just using their names, we can actually know what they look like. We know what they wore. You look closely there. They've got like I think of them as like Smurf hats in the wind, sort of blown the wrong way. And that's the kind of hat that they wore. And then you see they've got beards, because beard was traditional, which was not true for the Egyptians, by the way. The Egyptians were all clean shaven. If you see Egyptians with a little like a goatee beard, but like the pharaohs or goatee beard, look closely at the statue and you'll see a little cord that they even do this on the statues, because it's a fake beard and it's got little strings around the ears. It's a fake beard because they believed in being clean shaven. So they have a fake beard attached. Even the Sphinx has got that. But anyway, don't go into it. But it's interesting, and it's interesting, isn't it? But they did have beards, facial beard, good facial beard there, and then they wear these robes, and you see the robes have got these kind of like embroidery on them. Do you know in Hebrew, we're told that Joseph was given a special robe by his dad, and it does not say in the Bible that it was a Technicolor dream coat. Nowhere in Hebrew does it say Technicolor dream coat. What it says is a many weave coat. That was the kind of coat they gave. It was an elaborate costume, really, national dress. This is the many weave coat that the Israelites wore. That is the many weave coat that Joseph was given, that will live on in the musicals as his Technicolor dream coat. Well, that's what the Israelites wore. Hey, click. We're getting there. So, okay, look, right, names and places. How do we know any of this stuff in terms of evidence? Where are we looking? Well, there's something very special about this region of the world, Canaan, Israel, Egypt, Syria, and that is the way they built. They built towns one on top of the other. You're looking there at Jericho. That's the town of Jericho in the Bible. That's where the walls came tumbling down. The thing is, though, when the walls came tumbling down, they then build on top. And then they build on top. They keep staying in the same place and rebuilding it. What you're looking at there is the aerial view of Jericho, called Tel El Sultan nowadays. That's actually the oldest continuously occupied city in the entire world. People have been living there. I mean, not now. You see, it's abandoned. There's a modern town of Jericho, but they've abandoned the old site. But there's 10,000 years of people living there. 10,000 years, one on top of the other. And what that means is that when walls come tumbling down, you build on top and it protects things below. And that's why, look at all the holes in that picture. There is a reason why they call Canaan the Holy Land. It's the Holy Land. It's full of holes. And that's because the archaeologists love digging it. All the holes you can see there are archaeological holes. That would have just been a green hill with grass growing on it, until the 1930s, when archaeologists came along and said, let's dig this up. And they've been doing it ever since, and it looks like it's full of holes. That's where this brick comes from. So this is one of the collapsed bricks from one of the walls on this end, actually, at the bottom of the screen, from the city of Jericho. This is 3,650 years old. It's part of the bricks of a massive fortification that fell. And it fell outwards, interestingly, All the bricks are on the outside. You know, if it was an earthquake, you'd expect the walls to go in any direction, right? They've all fallen outwards. If an enemy army came and pushed the walls down, they'd go inwards. All these walls have fallen outwards. It's one of those bricks, 3,600 years ago. Now, can I definitely say that is from the Joshua conquest in the Bible? Well, all I can say is the dates fit. That's what you would expect to find. And that's what the archaeology shows. I can't prove it. It doesn't say anywhere on here that I've seen. It doesn't say Joshua was here. You know? Caleb did this. It doesn't say that anywhere. But it's the right time. It's the right place. And look at my fingers. It's eroding. Now, that literally is eroding. I mean, I've had it a few years and it's going to turn to dust, right, as it is. It was actually, by the way, I didn't bring it back to the UK. I will just say, by the way, it's all a bit dubious because people say, just stolen. No, look, there's lots of these. And this was brought back in the 1960s from Jericho by a French archaeologist. And if it had stayed there, if he hadn't brought it back, by now, it would have turned to dust completely. It'd be gone. Because you think of the erosion that's going on there. All this stuff is eroding all the time. Once you've dug it up and exposed it, it erodes. There is a bit of moisture in the air. Things crumble, things get crushed, and they disappear. So it just happens to have made its way to Lansdowne. But like I said, I don't know how much longer it'll survive. And that is directly from this particular location. If you go and explore the land of Israel, you will see lots of these hills, right? Let's just do another click. So that's Jericho. And that's the oldest one. Thousands of years of occupation. But there, Rob's looking out the corner there of what in the Bible, in the New Testament, is called Scythopolis. Have you ever come across that name? It's in the Gospel of Mark. Not very well known. It's not particularly important in the Gospels, but it is there. That's near to, well, it's on the way down from Nazareth down to Jerusalem, if you're going on the way down. Now, look at it. Doesn't that look like a volcano? That's actually an artificial hill. That's city upon city upon city. They built one on top of the other. As things fell down, they just build on top, build on top. And so actually what you're looking at there is the remains of about 28 different cities, one on top of the other. And by the time you get to the top, it's too high. It's like a volcano. They abandon it. So actually, if you look at the left-hand side there, that's the New Testament town. That's the time of Jesus. In other words, the hill are Old Testament cities. And then it gets abandoned because it gets too high, and they start again on the ground. And that's the town as it was at the time of Jesus. If you go on to the next one, here's an exciting one. I'd love to take you here sometime. Megiddo. Megiddo. Now, Megiddo is very near Nazareth. That's nice and green. Again, if the archaeologists had not got involved, that would be a pleasant green hill. But they've been digging and digging, and they've excavated, and they found lots of exciting things there. About 22 different cities there at Megiddo. It's partly because people keep having fights and wars. Again, this is the Holy Land, right? Everybody fights over it. And in those conflicts, cities get burned down or destroyed, and then they build on top. Megiddo has had a lot of fights over the years. Lots of people have fought there. Napoleon fought there. The British Army fought there. Ancient Egyptians fought there. There have been so many battles there. The plain around it, seen as the great battlefield of history, has got a name in Greek. And the name in Greek is Ha-Megiddo. And that's what we know as Armageddon. Armageddon. That's where we get the word Armageddon from, you know. Armageddon out of here because this is a place of conflict. And that is the battlefield of world history. People have fought over that. I could do a whole evening on Armageddon sometimes. An amazing sight. And in the book of Revelation, that's a site of final conflict. But for our purposes, it also means the archaeology gets preserved. Ironically, if it wasn't for the battles, these things wouldn't get buried and preserved. So if you click on, let me just, we are coming towards an end. Don't worry, we're nearly there. But I want to show you this one. Now, I've got the picture on the screen of one that was found. This is amazing, right? This is at one called Dan. It's called Tel Dan, by the way. Yeah, I'll show you on there. Well, you can do the honors over there, okay? Now, Dan, the northernmost town was excavated. Before this was found, where am I? Oh yeah, there. I'm looking at the wrong screen then. Before this was found, I'll pass it around, okay? Before this was found. And it's only found in the 1990s. Various people in the Bible have been dismissed as myths, legends. One of them was King David. People said, there's no evidence for King David. They said, King David is like a King Arthur, you know, King Arthur and the Holy Grail and Monty Python and so on. That's all David is. It's not real. And even theologians would say that, you know, dismiss it. Say, well, if there was a David, like the Bible says, where is he in the archaeology? Where's the evidence? Well, the 1990s, 1993, 1994, 2 fragments were found. There's another bit that joins together with this. And this is called the Tel Dan inscription. And what's on here? Well, you see there's a little bit of, if you click, actually, we'll zoom in on it. This is the earliest direct reference to King David found anywhere in the world. And this isn't the original, by the way. That's in the Israel Museum. It'd be worth a few bucks. It's a very good replica. It's got the exact outlines of it. And this is an Aramaic text. And 4 lines up there, they put it in white on the picture you can see there, is the name of King David. There's a lot of other information on this tablet as well. But it's a direct reference to King David, the house of David, from the time of David. It's nearly 3,000 years old. And it was actually written by enemies of Israel. Funnily enough, they put this up as a kind of like propaganda thing. And the Israelites smashed it up. And what do they do with it? Because they broke it. You'll see the bit handing around. It's got all the breaks on it as well. They smashed it up and they used it as hardcore fill for building a wall. Now, again, that's all conflict and damage, but it's a wonderful thing because when archaeologists dug up the wall, they knew the wall dated to 800 BC. So anything that was used in the foundations must be older than that. It's a bit like this floor here, right? I mean, this was only, what, 3 years ago, wasn't it? 4 years ago, yeah, something like that. But therefore, anything in the foundations under this floor has got to be older than this room, right? It's got to be, 4 years ago. Well, that's older than 800 BC. It gets you back to within a few decades of the life of King David, and it's a direct reference to King David from enemies of David, inscribed in stone and buried in the ground for archaeologists to find in the 1990s. Hey, Sarah, I've got 1,001 other things to share with you, right? But I reckon that's probably a taste for 35 minutes. Cool. Yeah. And we could just sort of go for questions or whatever instead of me going through more. But these are examples. I hope that gives you an idea of the kind of stuff, because we're going to do another session if you're interested. And even if you're not interested, we'll do another session. Yeah. But the point is, this is the kind of thing that archaeology shows, and it helps confirm. If you just click, 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 I'll give you one Bible verse. So just see my life flash before my eyes. And so click, 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 click. That's it. Stop there. I'd love to tell you about the other things. But 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 16 says, we did not follow cleverly devised stories when we told you about the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ in power. We were eyewitnesses of his majesty. The Bible is based on eyewitness evidence. They saw it. In the Old Testament, which we've talked about mostly tonight, they saw these things unfold and wrote them down. In the New Testament, they saw the miracles of Jesus, the teachings of Jesus, and they wrote them down. And now, with the brand new world of archaeology, because really, these things we're talking about are only from the last few decades, we're finding more and more evidence that demonstrates this is real eyewitness material, not fake, not fairy tale, not mythology, but real history. Amen. Thank you.